Hey everyone, John Henry here, slingshotfutures.com, and welcome to the daily market outlook for futures and Forex, where we take a look at our big six markets. Now, the main goal of the outlook is to create a plan for tomorrow so that we can be as prepared as possible for tomorrow's price action. So let's jump straight in here. We've got gold that just kind of ended as a complete mess. It was moving relatively well today, but then it sort of took a dive into the dumpsters. Now, this really bad end-of-day movement that we're seeing here, that could just be because they got pretty much everything out of the way, right? We've got all of the big movement still kind of continuing that range, and after they broke down that range, they really couldn't get anything else going, and it's been hours since that just gross nastiness has really kind of begun. We started off the day, nice rally to the upside, then they gave all of it back, right? And then they made one more attempt at the high, and they had a to-the-tick double top at 1180.7, and then dumped right through the bottom. The buyers just completely gave up and shoved the market back down to the lows. Now, the issue here is that that's starting to tell us that we have a possible range, and there's probably going to be buyers underneath the lows thinking that it's, very likely going to pop back up in, and it did for a little bit. And then it popped back down below it. And ever since then, we've just gone sideways. So really, before we do anything on gold, I want to see it get out of this mess, right? And very frequently when it gets this nasty, that much back and forth, this is what you would call barbed wire, because it looks like barbed wire and it has about the same effect. It's going to cut you if you're not careful. So what I would really like to see here is a break out of this wedge, get a little bit of a run back to the highs, because it seems to be what they like doing, into the area of resistance between 76.2 and 75.5, and then look for the sellers to drop it right back down to the lows on new and better pricing if we can get that pop higher. If it does just continue down to the lows, I have a really hard time believing we're going to get much further than maybe a wedge bottom, and that's about it. So if we do break down without getting that correction to the upside, the downside is likely going to be limited. But if we can get a nice pop higher first and then sell where price is optimal, we should have a nice potential run towards the downside. Now, with crude oil, we had a relatively bullish move up, and that bullishness was followed with a big dive lower, right? Just a huge two candles all the way down, took back everything that the morning had. And the buyers saw that as a huge opportunity. If they missed the buy down here because that was at 2 o'clock, or if they missed the pullback buy here at around 7:30, 8 o'clock, they were now finally given a chance just after 11 o'clock to jump back in at the exact same price. And that's exactly what they did, because look at that humongous wick on the bottom, completely shattered any hopes that the sellers had, and push right back up towards the highs. Now, with that move back up to the highs, we are finding a little bit of resistance across the high, and it also looks like we may be getting some support underneath as we transition into a possible range. Now, with this range-bound environment that we're getting right here, it's not a huge surprise because all of the markets are sort of seeing that. It seems like all of them kind of got all this whip and all this back and forth, and then they sort of went quiet after they took it all back. So looking for a buy, I want to be a buyer here, but I have a really hard time buying this far up. What I would really like to see is a quick dive down into support and then a new high, or even better, if they can dive down underneath that 50-58 area and push back up towards the highs. And there is an obvious level at 50.02, not to mention the big round number at 50, that has held support and resistance several times every time we've come back to it. Even if you zoom out on a big daily time frame, you're going to see that same level acting up quite a bit. So that 50 level, it would be nice to get back down to that area, because we're probably going to be able to get a good 20-30 tick bounce off of it, because that's generally what's been happening so far. But looking to be a buyer just on a pullback, not where we are right now. On the Dow, we continued that massive rally from yesterday, just a gargantuan run to the upside, and we never even pulled back, right? We were looking at wanting to buy even just a shallow little correction, and they couldn't even do it, right? They pushed down, they almost got it, and immediately rejected. That's how aggressive the buyers were at those lows. Nobody wanted to buy up here, nobody wanted to buy up here, or here, or anywhere in here, but when they were given a chance to buy the low like that, they swarmed it and slammed it all the way back to the highs. And with that big bullish reaction towards the top side, got a little bit exhaustive once again. Now, yesterday was an example where the entire day is exhaustive, right? But this time around, we've got a little bit more, it makes a little more sense here. We had that big push up way above the channel. They tried breaking out higher, failed back down in. The buyers gave it one more shot, and now they're correcting back lower. Very frequently, when you get that double press above or below an area, you're going to see that breakout distance go equal on the other side. So what I would really like to see right now, if the buyers can't hold this low, which it looks like they are really trying to do, but if they do pull back on themselves a little bit, I would love to see a buy at around 594, maybe even a little bit lower, because by the time we get there, that should be about the equidistant amount for a breakout from the up to the down, right around that area. So if we can get a little trap underneath the lows, an equidistant breakout, that should be a beautiful buying opportunity to shove the market right back up towards the highs. And considering how aggressive the buyers have been so far on any dip, it may not even happen, right? We may just not come back from here. That is a very aggressive higher low. Kind of play it by ear. Right now is a buying opportunity, but if we can get a pullback, that would be much, much better. And then on over to the Forex markets, we have the EURUSD, kind of the inverse of what the Dow looked like yesterday. Huge bearishness to the downside. Now, after all of that bearishness subsided, really all that ended up happening was mostly just a bearish range, right? You can see the bottom kind of round itself out. That's very common to see with a big spike like that. And chances are tomorrow, we're not going to be much more than a range. The range high is probably going to be around the top edge of this area of interest, 670, 6791. 6641 in that area, and the bottom probably going to be right around here somewhere, around that 600 area. So looking for tomorrow to be a range, and because of that, obviously I would rather sell high than buy low right now, given the overall bearishness. So if we can get a push up into this area, I would love to sell it, but we may be able to pick off some buys as well. So just kind of keep the buy side on the radar, maybe with a little bit of an offset, and the sell side definitely has the bias here on the euro. Over on the pound dollar, a little bit more back and forth, right? We had a nice upward momentum and they gave it all back, and now we're starting to get the exact same thing on the other side. Now we did round off of this major area of support at 26,160, nice little double bottom right there. And that also is an area of resistance between 26,308 to 26,193. So this chunk of resistance here is where I would love to become a seller once again. Now, this move down that we had was a little bit exhaustive, right? All of the big move, this is pretty much the biggest candle, that entire drive lower at the very end of the move and no follow through. It's a little bit of a red flag, right? So what I would much rather do, since the sellers are obviously not interested in selling the low, I want to sell the highs. The first area of selling would just be a trap right around here, around this 25.90 area. But if we can get a little bit more greedy in terms of the price where we want to get in, that area up here between 26,308 down to 26,160 could be a phenomenal area to look for a possible head fake and shorting opportunities to attempt those lows once again. And then finally on the on the dollar yen rather, the dollar yen, we're just in a wedge, right? We had a beautiful breakout to the upside. We had that higher low, huge reversal back up, massive buying pressure. When they pulled back, they found immediate support right there. And if we look backward a little bit, that level, it's certainly not the first time that it's come into play, right? We can pick off, 5 or 10 different times just in the past day that it's bounced off that area. So if we can come back to that level, which it looks like the sellers are trying to break down, if we can get a tap at around that 113,788, maybe a little bit below it, that's where a lot of buyers are going to be looking to try to buy low for at least a minimum of a half distance bounce from the highs to that buy area. And that puts an area of interest right around that 114-ish area, maybe a little bit higher to 114.10. But either way, looking for a bounce off that 113,788 for a quick move up. And then depending on what they want to do, if they want to continue holding it, the next objective is way up here at 114.40.41. If they end up breaking down, we're looking at using that area as resistance for all the buyers who got in, realizing they're wrong, liquidating their position and causing the market to go right back to the downside and probably just end up as a big range. So that's going to do it for today. Little bit of a wacky one, that's for sure. A lot of movement today, and then everything just sort of fell asleep. So going into tomorrow, may not have a whole lot going on. There is no big news going on tomorrow, at least so far on the calendar. We know that can change every 5 minutes. So, but outside of that, that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you can get a little bit of information out of this so you can approach tomorrow as prepared as possible. Like always, make a plan, trade the plan, follow your rules, and you'll be just fine. And until tomorrow, we'll see y'all next time.